my opening statement. As I have mentioned, hey.
That was your opening statement, John. There's such anticipation.
Just so you know, Code Pink is here.
Yeah. Good morning. The committee meets today to begin a series of oversight hearings on the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, which the United States and other major powers have signed with Iran. We welcome our distinguished witnesses and thank them for joining us today. We appreciate Senators Kerry and Secretary Moniz and Secretary Liu being here. For the record, I did not request the presence of Secretary Kerry or Moniz or Secretary Liu. I am glad they're here at their desire to do so, since this focus of today's hearing, as befits the role of this committee, is on the strategic and military implications of the Iran agreement. What we want to know, among other things, is how this agreement will affect regional security, proliferation, and the balance of power in the Middle East, what impact it may have on Iran's malign activities and hegemonic ambitions in the region, what it means for perceptions of American credibility and resolve among our allies and partners, and what the consequences are for U.S. defense policy, military planning, and force structure. When we consider these broader strategic consequences of the agreement, the second-order effects, what is already a bad deal only looks that much worse. To this committee, perhaps of most concern about the agreement itself pertains to the verification and monitoring mechanisms. As has been publicly reported, the inspections of Iran's facilities will be conducted by the International Atomic Energy Agency, or IAEA. There will be no Americans allowed on the ground, and the details of how these monitoring activities will occur in certain important instances are contained in a separate agreement between the IAEA and Iran, which the U.S. government and the Congress have not seen. Furthermore, the mechanism to resolve the long-standing international concerns about the possible military dimensions of Iran's nuclear program is contained in another side agreement between Iran and the IAEA, which the U.S. government and the Congress have also not seen. To be sure, much is known about Iran's past weaponization activities, but we can never know what we do not know, which is why the director of the IAEA has said that effective verification depends on resolution of the PMD issue. How that will occur, we do not know. This presents a major problem. All of us will soon vote on the Iran agreement, and the merits of this agreement hinges on its verifiability. And yet we cannot even read key documents pertaining to these verification measures, and our own government is not even a party to those agreements. I find that deeply troubling. What is more troubling are the broader military implications of this agreement. Iran is not just an arms control challenge. It is a geopolitical challenge. For years, many of us have urged the administration to adopt a broader strategy to counter Iran's malign activities in the Middle East. Unfortunately, that has not happened. Instead, we have watched with alarm as Iran's military and intelligence operatives have stepped up their destabilizing activities and increased their influence and control in places like Syria, Iraq, Lebanon, Yemen, Bahrain, and Gaza. Iran has done all of this under the full pressure of sanctions. Now Iran will soon receive a windfall of sanctions relief, estimated at roughly $60 billion, or possibly as much as twice that. Yes, a good amount of that money will surely go to Iran's domestic priorities. But it's only fair to assume that billions of dollars that will flow to Iran's Revolutionary Guards Corps and the Quds Force, money that will likely be used to boost arms supplies to Iran's terrorist proxies, to sow chaos and instability across the region, and to double down on Bashar Assad right when he needs it most. This will present a host of new challenges for the Department of Defense. What's worse, not only could this agreement strengthen Iran's malign activities in the region, it's also likely to enhance Iran's acquisition of conventional military capabilities. For nearly a decade, an international arms embargo has significantly hurt Iran's ability to build up and modernize its aging military. Throughout the nuclear negotiations, the administration insisted that its diplomacy was limited exclusively to the nuclear file. Indeed, just a few weeks ago, General Dempsey told this committee that, quote, under no circumstances should we relieve pressure on Iran relative to ballistic missile capabilities and arms trafficking. And yet, thanks to last-minute concessions by the administration, that's exactly what this agreement would do. At year 5, the international arms embargo will disappear, and Iran will be free to acquire advanced military capabilities such as fighter aircraft, attack helicopters, warships, and anti-access weapons. At year 8, international restrictions on Iran's ballistic missile programs will disappear, and Iran will be free to acquire, through entirely licit means, the necessary technology and material for ever more sophisticated ballistic missiles, including ICBMs. And in all of this, Iran will not only have billions of dollars with which to go on a shopping spree in the international arms market, but it is also sure to find plenty of states that are eager to sell those weapons, especially Russia and China. In this way, the Iran agreement not only paves Iran's path to a nuclear capability, it will further Iran's emergence as a dominant military power in the Middle East. This has direct and dangerous implications for U.S. armed forces. The ultimate guarantee that Iran will not get a nuclear weapon is not a 109-page document. It is the capability of the U.S. military to do what is necessary if all else fails. And yet this agreement would enable Iran to construct the kind of advanced military arsenal that could make our military option far costlier to employ. Instead of enhancing our deterrence of Iran, this agreement seems to enhance Iran's deterrence of us. In short, if this agreement fails, the U.S. service members are called upon to take action against Iran. Their lives could be at greater risk because of this agreement. And that is perhaps the most troubling aspect of all about this agreement, what it means for America's credibility in the Middle East. Since 1979, Republican and Democratic administrations have sought to contain the Islamic Republic of Iran and prevent it from acquiring a nuclear weapons capabilities. Our allies and partners have entrusted much of their own security to the United States because they have believed that our commitment were credible. In this way, America's role in the region has been to suppress security competition between states with long histories of mistrust and to prevent that competition from breaking into open war. I fear this agreement will further undermine our ability and willingness to play that vital stabilizing role. Our allies and partners in the Middle East have increasingly come to believe that America is withdrawing from the region and doing so at a time when Iran is aggressively seeking to advance its hegemonic ambitions. Now we have reached an agreement that will not only legitimize the Islamic Republic as a threshold nuclear state with an industrial enrichment capability, but will also unshackle this regime in its long-held pursuit of conventional military power and may actually consolidate the Islamic Republic's control in Iran for years to come. After turning 3 decades of U.S. foreign policy on its head, is it any wonder that this agreement may lead our allies and partners to question America's commitment to their security? As that happens, these are increasingly likely to take matters into their own hands, and indeed, we already see evidence of that. These fateful decisions may well manifest themselves in growing regional security competition, arms races, nuclear proliferation, and possibly conflict, all of which would demand more, not less, U.S. leadership and presence in the region. It would be ironic, but not historically unprecedented, that a diplomatic agreement intended to decrease the risk of conflict actually increase those risks instead. All of us hope that will not be the case now, but it is the job of the Defense Department to be ready when our highest hopes fail us, and I fear there is much work to do. I welcome the witnesses. Senator Reid.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Secretary Kerry, Secretary Moniz, Secretary Lew, Secretary Carter, General Dempsey. Your appearance before the committee comes a little more than 2 weeks after the world woke up to the news that after 20 months of negotiations, the P5+1 and Iran agreed on the terms of the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. The agreement, no matter your position on it, is historic and, if implemented scrupulously, could serve as a strategic inflection point in the world's relations with Iran, for international nonproliferation efforts, and for the political and security dynamics in the Middle East. And I commend the President and his negotiating team, from cabinet officials to our nation's scientists, for their persistence and hard work. In the weeks ahead, Congress has a solemn obligation to carefully review the details of this historic agreement and to independently validate that the agreement will meet our common goal of stopping Iran from acquiring a nuclear weapon. Today's hearing is part of that obligation, and I look forward to your testimony. Secretary Kerry, you are the key architect of this agreement, and your willingness to take on what I'm sure feels like a thankless endeavor is to be commended. I hope you will help us understand why it is your assessment that this agreement is a good deal, and how you intend to direct our diplomats in the field to work with our partners in the region to address Iran's destabilizing activities in the region. Secretary Moniz, you played an important role in negotiations, and you too have been a strong advocate for the comprehensive plan of action throughout. During your testimony, I hope you will help us understand what gives you confidence in the technical safeguards built into this agreement, particularly with regard to, 1, the cutting off of Iran's pathways to nuclear weapon, 2, the cradle-to-grave access and auditability of the supply chain, 3, the dedicated procurement channel to manage all purchases of the nuclear supply group's trigger list and dual-use items, and 4, the IAEA additional protocol for enhanced inspections, and it is designed for detecting elements of a covert weapons program, and finally, the limitation on Iran's enrichment program. Secretary Carter, you are a unique Secretary of Defense with a PhD in physics, and having spent so much to procure our nuclear weapons, I look forward to your technical insights to these elements as well as those of Secretary Moniz. Both Secretary Carter and General Dempsey, while neither of you were a part of the negotiations, you have both recently traveled to the Middle East to speak with your counterparts about the agreement's potential implications for regional security. During your meetings, you undoubtedly heard the assessments of our partners and our allies on a range of issues, including how Iran may use sanctions relief to pursue its regional ambitions, expand its support to terrorist proxies, and invest more heavily in its military. These are serious concerns and ones which I share. Our partners in Israel see Iran as a significant and ongoing threat to their national security interests. While Prime Minister Netanyahu is unlikely to ever endorse this historic deal, it is incumbent upon the United States to deepen further our cooperation on military and intelligence matters with Israel and to better understand the concerns of the Israelis. It is also critical that our partners and allies in the Middle East know that the United States will not abandon the region in the wake of this nuclear agreement, and that we will continue to stand alongside them as we confront common state and non-state threats. The May 2015 joint statement following the U.S. and Gulf Cooperation Council, or GCC, meetings at Camp David provided a roadmap for how the administration intends to proceed. It also makes clear that the Department of Defense will be at the forefront of these efforts. Critics of the Vienna Agreement point to perceived flaws related to Iran's ballistic missile capability and its support of terrorist proxies across the region. The Camp David joint statement outlines our commitment to enhancing the ballistic missile defense capabilities of the GCC and improving their interoperability to increase collective defense in order to counter Iran's support of terrorist proxies. The joint statement indicates that we will be increasing our training and exercise engagements with GCC Special Operations Forces elements so as to better enable our partners to confront Iran's asymmetric capabilities. These are important efforts that I look forward to hearing about today. I want to make one final point. These negotiations focused on denying Iran a pathway to a nuclear weapon. A nuclear Iran would be a more formidable force in the region. and as it has repeatedly demonstrated, not a force for peace and stability, but one that supports terror and seeks to impose its will throughout the Middle East. Moreover, a nuclear Iran would likely prompt a nuclear arms race in the region that through accident or design could lead to catastrophe. None of us would condone or ignore Iran's support of terror or other destabilizing activities in the region, but the focus of these negotiations were properly focused on nuclear weapons. The history of arms control makes this point. As Fred Kaplan, a noted national security expert, pointed out, the United States-Soviet strategic arms treaties, signed throughout the Cold War, didn't require the Soviet Union to disavow communism, end its support of third world insurgencies, or institute Jeffersonian democracy. But the deals were still very useful. They capped and in the later years reversed the nuclear arms race, and they provided a forum for diplomacy, a cooling off of the distrust and hatred at a time when no other issue could have done so. I look forward to the panel's responses as we continue to understand this agreement and evaluates the capacity to cut off all pathways to a nuclear device and provide long-term warning of violations so that an appropriate response can take place. Thank you.
Thank the witnesses for being here today. And Secretary Carter, could we begin with you?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. And with your leave, I think that you preferred, and that's fine with us, if only I and General Dempsey make opening statements. The other witnesses have.
I hope that's agreeable to the other witnesses.
It is. It is. I believe it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ranking Member Reed. Thank you, all the members of the committee for giving me the opportunity to testify this morning on our defense strategy toward this critical region. In the wake, as Senator Reed noted, of my travels to the region last week, the chairman's also, and of course very importantly, 2 weeks after the conclusion of the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. I'm pleased to be joined by my fellow cabinet members who can talk in detail about that agreement reached in Vienna. That deal is an important step, one brought about by the leadership of President Obama, the persistent diplomacy of Secretaries Kerry, Moniz, and others, crippling sanctions that Secretary Liu led, and that Congress helped put in place. It's a good deal because it prevents Iran from getting a nuclear weapon in a comprehensive and verifiable way. Once implemented, it will therefore remove a critical element of risk and uncertainty. One element of risk and uncertainty, but a critical element of risk and uncertainty from the region. For those reasons, and those my colleagues have provided in testimony before other congressional committees, I urge you to support it. I also urge you to support the broader elements of the defense strategy in the Middle East I will describe, including and especially by supporting a stable and reformed defense budget to implement it. The successful negotiation of this deal is one part of our broader foreign and defense policy. As the most influential power in the world, we have responsibilities all over the globe. The Middle East remains important to America's national interests, and as a result, the Department of Defense is committed to confronting the region's two principal security challenges, Iran and ISIL. The Department's strategic approach to protecting our interests and confronting those challenges will remain unchanged. We will continue to maintain a strong military posture to deter aggression, to bolster the security of our friends and allies in the region, especially Israel, to ensure freedom of navigation in the Gulf, to check Iran's malign influence, and to degrade and ultimately defeat ISIL. We're also continuing to advance our military capabilities that provide all options, as the President has directed, should Iran walk away from its commitments under this deal. Last week, I was in the Middle East, and I had the opportunity to visit with some of our men and women in uniform who are carrying out this strategy. I know how much all of you care for them, and like me, you're proud of their impressive work. And I'll tell you this morning what I told them. We're continuing full speed ahead, standing with our friends, standing up to ISIL, and standing against Iran's malign activity. On ISIL, As I testified earlier this month, we have the right strategy in place, built on 9 synchronized lines of effort to achieve ISIL's lasting defeat. But we continue to strengthen execution. Today, in Iraq and other places, we are working with partners on the ground and a global coalition to enable capable and motivated ground forces to win back Iraq's sovereignty and peace on its own territory. I saw several parts of that effort last week and spoke with some of our partners on the ground. We're headed in the right direction in this counter-ISIL effort. We've made some progress, but we need to make more. On Iran, this new deal, when implemented, will place significant limitations on Iran that will effectively cut off its pathways to the fissile material for a nuclear bomb. But it's also important to note that it places no limitations, let me repeat that, no limitations on what the Department of Defense can and will do to pursue our defense strategy in the region. It places no limits on our forces, our partnerships and alliances, our intensive and ongoing security cooperation, or on our development and fielding of new military capabilities, capabilities we will continue to advance. If Iran were to commit aggression, our robust force posture ensures we can rapidly surge an overwhelming array of forces into the region, leveraging our most advanced capabilities, married with sophisticated munitions that put no target out of reach. Iran and its proxies will still present security challenges. Iran supports the Assad regime in Syria, backs Hezbollah in Lebanon, whose fighting positions, by the way, I observed firsthand during a visit to Israel's northern border last week with the Israeli defense minister, and is contributing to disorder in Yemen. And Iran still directs hostility and violence to our closest ally in the region, Israel. In the face of that malign activity, we will continue to meet our commitments to our friends and allies in the region, especially Israel, and continue to build on and enhance our cooperation in meaningful ways. I made that clear last week in Israel, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and Iraq. I also made clear that we will continue to maintain our robust regional force posture, ashore and afloat, which includes tens of thousands of American personnel and our most sophisticated ground, maritime, and air and ballistic missile defense assets. Our friends understand, despite our differences with some of them about the merits of this deal, that we have an enduring commitment to deterrence and to regional security. I'm proud to say that our defense partnerships in the region have never been stronger. And as I made clear in Israel, and as we agreed at Camp David with our Gulf partners, as Senator Reid indicated, we're committed to making them even stronger and more capable against a range of threats. The United States will maintain its ironclad commitment to Israel's qualitative military edge, or QME. We will keep providing Israel with advanced capabilities. For example, next year, Israel will be our first and only friend in the region flying the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter. We continue to work with Israel on ballistic missile defense systems, in fact, 3 of them, the Iron Dome, David Sling, and the Arrow system for missiles of progressively increasing range. And we're working multilaterally and bilaterally to improve the capability and capacity of our Gulf partners also. At the GCC summit at Camp David, hosted by the President in May, and last week with Saudi leaders, I stressed a number of functional areas that will be critical to enabling Gulf countries to play a stronger regional role, including maritime forces, ground forces, including especially special operations and counterterrorism forces, air and ballistic missile defense forces, and cyber protection. We also conduct over 50 military exercises a year with our regional partners. And we've offered sophisticated defense equipment, including the THAAD ballistic missile defense system and long-range precision strike capabilities to some of our Gulf partners. In conclusion, this is a good deal because it removes a continued source of threat and uncertainty in a comprehensive and verifiable way by preventing Iran from getting a nuclear weapon.
How much?
It's a deal that takes no option away from a future president. This is an important achievement and a deal that deserves your support. Meanwhile, the United States, the Department of Defense, and the men and women of the finest fighting force the world has ever known, with your support, will continue to be committed to the defense of America's interests, friends, and allies, to counter ISIL and Iran's malign influence, and to uphold the President's commitment that Iran will not obtain a nuclear weapon should it walk away from this deal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. General Dempsey.
Thank you, Chairman, Ranking Member Reed, and the members of this committee for the opportunity to address your questions regarding the military implications of the negotiated deal with Iran. Given our discussion before this body just a few weeks ago, I'll keep my comments brief. As I've stated previously, I was consulted on the military implications during the course of the negotiations and provided my best military advice appropriately. If followed, the deal addresses one critical and the most dangerous point of friction with the Iranian regime. But as I've stated repeatedly, there are at least 5 other malign activities which give us and our regional partners concern. These run the gamut from ballistic missile technology to weapons trafficking, to the use of surrogates and proxies, to naval mines and undersea activity, and last but not least, to malicious activity in cyberspace. The negotiated deal does not alleviate our concerns in those 5 areas. The negotiated deal does not change the military options at our disposal. And in our ongoing efforts to counter the Iranian regime's malign activities, we will continue to engage our partners in the region to reassure them and to address these areas. Ultimately, time and Iranian behavior will determine if the nuclear agreement is effective and sustainable. In the interim, I will continue to provide my best military advice and present military options. With that, I stand subject to your questions.
I'd mention to my colleagues we have a vote on right now, and usually we bounce back and forth, but I think that this is important enough for us to recess for until the completion of the second vote. I understand there's 2 that one is ending right now and the other's beginning. So I'd ask the indulgence of our witnesses, and I apologize if we could recess for approximately 10 minutes while we are able to complete these 2 votes. I think this hearing is important enough not to have us bounce back and forth, because I think all members would like to hear the complete testimony. So again, my apologies. We'll stand down for 10 minutes. The committee will reconvene, and I want to thank the witnesses for their patience. I'm sure they understand that from time to time we are required to vote. So I want to thank the witnesses for being here. And General Dempsey, your statement has been completed. And is there any other statements that would like to be made? Then we'll begin with questions, and we'll have 5 minutes. Secretary Carter, the issue has arisen that there is side agreements that have been made between the IAEA and Iran that apparently the Congress has not been made privy to. And could I ask that, since these IAEA agreements, side agreements, have to do with the weapons programs of the Iranians and the inspection and verification of those programs, will we in Congress receive the information concerning those side agreements in order to make a judgment as to the degree of verification?
Chairman, I think it's important that the content of those agreements and the manner in which they provide for verification of the nuclear undertakings Iran's making in this agreement and the procedures of the IAEA be known to the Congress. I can't speak for the actual specific documents themselves. I'm sure Secretary Moniz or Secretary Kerry can, but it's an important part of the verification of the agreement, and obviously verification is an important part of any agreement. Let me ask Secretary Moniz if he wants to add anything on the specifics of the IAEA.
Well, thank you, Ash. I could certainly add that first of all, to be honest, sir, I would not call them side agreements in the sense that the agreement in the JCPOA is that Iran must cooperate for the IAEA to complete its process on PND. Then the IAEA, as is standard, negotiates a safeguards confidential document with the country to define the protocols that will satisfy the IAEA.
Those protocols are very important, Mr. Secretary. Are we going to be aware of those protocols? Because we know that with any agreement with a country such as Iran, the devil is in the details.
All I can say is that, well, first of all, I personally have not seen those documents.
Which is astounding, to be honest with you. That is absolutely astounding, that you have not seen the documents that about requirement for verification.
All I can say is that the agreement requires their cooperation with the IAEA, and this is the standard practice of the IAEA, whose independence is very critical to all of us.
What's critical to all of us, Mr. Secretary, that we have verification of and inspections of Iranian activities because they have a clear record of cheating.
We agree.
So we agree, all of us, I believe, that we should see those instruments of verification. Otherwise, how can we make a judgment as to this agreement can be enforced and verified with a country that has a long record of cheating?
The IAEA will, of course, then take the information that Iran must provide by October 15th and complete their report. And at that time, I think we will understand the IAEA's confidence in their verification measures.
So we are
building up, I might say, a very long history of this.
So we are then dependent on the confidence of the IAEA, not the actual viewing of the agreement and verification. I don't think many of us would agree with that process. General Dempsey, you told the committee just a few weeks ago, quote, "Under no circumstances should we relieve pressure on Iran relative to ballistic missile capabilities and arms trafficking." Now we are seeing, after 5 years, a relief of sanctions on conventional arms and, of course, 8 years ballistic missiles. How does that comport with terms of this agreement with the statement that you made before the committee?
Well, it won't surprise you, Chairman, to know that my recommendation was to keep pressure on Iran on the other malign activities for as long as possible, and that recommendation was made and then entered into the negotiating process. I will say, I think that time works for us as well as Iran in this regard, and so with the agreement made and having had the opportunity to give my advice, I support it.
Do you, Secretary Carter, believe that Iran will change its behavior as a result if this agreement is finalized? And have you seen any indication of that?
I've not, Mr. Chairman, and speaking just for my own judgment, I don't foresee that or have any reason to foresee that. That is why it's important that the agreement be verifiable. That's why it's important that Iran not have a nuclear weapon. And that's also why it's important that we keep doing everything that we need to do. Defend our friends and allies, remain strong in the Gulf, freedom of navigation, ballistic missile defense, all the things we're doing. We need to keep doing those things, and the agreement doesn't limit us in any way. Obviously, if Iran changes its behavior, that would be a welcome thing, but I see no reason to foresee that, Chairman, personally.
I see no reason to foresee it, and I see them now with about $50 or $60 billion with which to pursue those malign activities. And I've seen Secretary Liu's testimony and others that don't worry, they'll be using it for domestic purposes. They're doing it now with the assets that they have. One can only imagine what they might be doing with 50 or 60 billion additional dollars. Look, I just would like to say again, I know that the witnesses have very busy schedules, and I'm grateful that you sought to testified before the committee today in order to help us understand this issue, and I thank you. Senator Reid.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Carter, you indicated in your statement that the United States has not given up any of its military options with respect to the region and to the Iranians. And I would presume also that it has not given up any of its military intelligence and national intelligence operations with respect to Iran. And those intelligence operations, I would presume, would be focused in great detail on potential violations of this treaty. Is that your sense, too?
Yes, without going into detail here, certainly we have intelligence activities focused on the Iranian nuclear program, but we have on everything else they're doing: malign activity, Quds force, ballistic missiles, arms transfers, the whole thing. It's a very important intelligence effort.
And Secretary Moniz, I understand that General Clapper yesterday indicated that he is confident, I think is a reasonable explanation, of the intelligence community's ability to detect any significant violation of the treaties with or without direct contact with IAE. Is that a fair judgment in your mind?
Yes, in fact, DNI Clapper, CIA Deputy Director Cohen, National Geospatial Intelligence Agency head Cardillo, all made statements. Clapper in particular said that we would have far greater insight into the Iranian program with the agreement, and I would add that far greater insight will persist essentially forever.
General Dempsey, in your military assessment, is what is more effective in delaying or stopping the Iranian nuclear program at this time or in the near future, a military strike or this PEEP 5+1 agreement?
Well, first, Senator, I'd like to point out that the military options remain.
Right.
Secondly, I think that a negotiated settlement provides a more durable and reduces near-term risk, which buys time to work with regional partners to address the other malign activities. But there are about 5 military implications. You've invited me here today to talk about the military implications, if you
Please.
allow me. I mean, the first is it does reduce the risk of a near-term conflict with Iran over their nuclear program. Secondly, another military implication is we have to sustain those options. They have to be preserved into the future. Third, there is clearly the opportunity for Iran to use some of the revenue that they gain for malign purposes, and that bears watching and collaboration with our regional partners, including Israel. Fourth, this will require us to strengthen our relationships and our collaboration in that part of the world. And derivative of that is fifth, we should maintain and will maintain our forward presence. Those are the military implications.
The GCC, in terms of the military expenditures, roughly double what the Iranians spend and has a capacity of even going much higher given their revenues. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, double is probably the average. Certain countries far more than that.
And one of the factors that we're going to have to work with our allies in the region is making sure that those resources are focused and can deter or defeat any aggression or proxy aggression by the Iranians. And that's the whole point, I think, of the collaboration that you're undertaking.
We've got a series of initiatives, both with the Israelis and the GCC, to better position ourselves to address those other malign activities.
And so we have a situation developing where the resources are available. We're trying to reorganize in collaboration with the regional partners so they're much more effective to respond. So essentially, we're not ignoring these hostile threats by the Iranians on the ground through proxy or anything else. Indeed, we're, in a sense, amping up our activities. Is that fair?
Well, what I would say, Senator, is, my responsibility is to articulate risk and provide options to our elected leaders and how to mitigate them. And this does cause us to have to increase our military. We have to pay more attention to the malign activities.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Right now, we're in the middle of one of the largest bills of the year, and I'm the sponsor. Therefore, I haven't been in on all this fun. So I read this morning to see what happened yesterday, Secretary Kerry. This is in the Washington Post. President Obama promised that his nuclear deal with Iran would not be based on trust, but rather unprecedented verification. Now it turns out Obama's verification regime is based on trust after all. Trust in two secret side agreements negotiated exclusively between Iran and the International Atomic Energy Agency that apparently no one, including the Obama administration, has seen. And it goes on to say it turns out that only two parties, the IAEA and Iran, have yet to actually see it. However, well, and then further in the U.S. News and World Report, it says by law, the administration is required to provide Congress with the contents of the nuclear deal and all related matters in annexes. Secretary Kerry, do you agree with that analysis of the law, what your requirement is?
Senator, let me just say to clarify on the earlier part of the question, Congress will be fully briefed on this agreement in a classified session. And indeed, one of our key negotiators, the day-to-day lead negotiator, Wendy Sherman, was briefed on it, and Ernie Moniz was likewise briefed on it. So we are aware of what the basics of it are. It is standard procedure. I mean, there are 189 countries that have an agreement with the IAEA that are signed up to the NPT. Not that many have agreements.
My question is, are we entitled to all the related materials and indexes?
Yes, those that are part of the agreement per se. This is by reference, and no country has access to the confidential agreements directly of the IAEA in a country.
Yeah, I don't mean to interrupt you, but my time is limited here. I can't imagine that this wouldn't be a part of what we all would be briefed on. Now, yesterday, when Congressman Poe asked the question, he said the secret deal. Secretary Rice said that she has seen the deal with the IAEA and she's going to share it with Congress. Now, that's the question. If you have seen it, since
No,
you see it at the same time or prior to the time that Secretary Rice saw it?
Senator, National Security Advisor Rice has not seen it.
Well, she said she did yesterday.
No, she has been briefed on it. I gave her exact quote to Congressman Poe, and the exact quote is that she's been briefed on it. She hasn't actually seen it.
Okay, I'll give you her quote and make sure it's in the record here. It says, she said she did. She did see it. She did evaluate it. She said she did 6 days ago. That's 7 days ago now. She said 6 days ago she had seen it and reviewed it, and that Congress will get to see it in a classified section.
Congressman, Senator, you're quoting Congressman Poe.
Who is quoting her? This is in quotation
I
marks.
corrected him with her direct quote, which we took from public record. Her quote says that she has been briefed. She has not seen it.
I have not seen that because I don't think that she did correct that. That was specific on something that happened 6 days before. As a matter of fact, that was in the Hill magazine.
The White House press briefing directly.
The Hill magazine had something about that, and that was prior to the time. It was 7 days ago today, Secretary Kerry, that we had a confidential classified briefing, right? I was there, you were there, most of the people at this table were there. And I would say this, in a classified session, you can't say what was said, but was that addressed at all? Was that addressed at all?
It was addressed, it was, a question came up about it, and the answer was given that, of course, Congress will be briefed with respect to the contents, and, of course, you need to be briefed. Everybody needs to be briefed.
My point is, Mr. Secretary, that was a classified session where we were in a position to be briefed at that time, and we weren't.
I don't think we had the full material to brief. I didn't have it anyway, but we are prepared. I think Wendy Sherman is going to be briefing very shortly on that, Senator. But what we did provide, what we can provide, is the actual roadmap that the IAEA put out, and the IAEA has issued a full roadmap of what their expectations are.
I understand that, but I'm talking about the deal, the secret documents.
Well,
that's what I'm referring to.
it's a confidential agreement. It's being postured as this great sort of side. It's a confidential agreement which is the standard procedure of the IAEA. And we have lived with the IAEA, Senator. We have relied on the IAEA for years and years.
Okay.
And historically, the IAEA always creates what's called a comprehensive safeguards agreement, a CSA, which they negotiate with a country. And we don't get that exact, it's not shared with the world. And there are reasons that it's confidential that have to do with what you can get out of that country, but we do get briefed on it. We're aware of it. Secretary Moniz has actually made some recommendations to the IAEA for them to actually tighten it up a bit. I think, Secretary Moniz, you've certainly got confidence in it, in what you've heard.
My time has expired, but I would say to the chairman, it's incomprehensible that we didn't have full access to that, and I think most of the people agree with that, but my time expired. Thank you.
Senator Nelson.
Thank you. Gentlemen all, thank you for your public service. Mr. Secretary Lew, I want to go down a different road. We have heard so many different commentaries about how much of a windfall the sanctions relief would be for Iran. We've heard 100, 150 billion. The chairman is speaking of 50 or 60 billion. You tell me if this is correct. That basically sanctions relief of what has been withheld is about 100 billion. But in that 100 billion, there are contractual obligations of Iran to pay some 50 billion. And therefore, the net that would approximately come to Iran would be about 50 billion. Is that somewhere in the ballpark?
Senator, that is roughly correct. I'm happy to walk down the numbers to the best of my knowledge.
You don't need to. I'm trying to get concepts here.
But the one thing I would add is there's between 50 and 60 billion dollars that is accessible, but that money is not sitting in U.S.
That's where I wanted to go. That money is sitting in foreign banks, is it not?
Is sitting around the world in countries like China and India and many other countries.
China, India, Japan, even Taiwan and UAE, those banks?
Correct.
Therefore, if we denied the lifting of economic sanctions, that money is in the hands of foreign banks. What, in your professional opinion, is the likelihood that that money would be released?
Well, just to be clear,
to Iran?
It's Iran's money that's tied up because of sanctions. So they've sold oil, the money has gone into these foreign accounts, and it's sitting there. If this agreement, this deal, were to be rejected, the question is, what do those other banks do? I don't think they will feel bound to hold that money the way they've held it in an escrow away from Iran. And I think without a nuclear agreement, some of that money will start going back to Iran if there's no agreement, if this agreement is rejected.
So to recapitulate then, if we were to reject it, the money is likely to flow because it's in the hands of foreign banks that would not be compelled to adhere to the United States' wishes at that point. Is that correct?
Right. We do obviously have sanctions that we could impose in other ways, but this money is not sitting in U.S. banks. We can't lock it up directly. We need the cooperation of other governments, other central banks, other banks in order to keep this money from Iran. And just to add one more detail, I think the notion that somehow a $50, $60 billion check gets written is wrong. They can't spend all this money. This is the foreign reserve that they need to settle their foreign transactions. They're already doing transactions in some of these countries that are permitted, using their foreign reserves as exchange. They still will need to buy things overseas. So they can't just spend all this money, or their ability to conduct international commerce goes away. And as I've said before, they have hundreds of billions of dollars of competing domestic needs. So while I can't say that not a penny will go to malign purposes, I've never said that, I think the magnitude of resources available is highly exaggerated by the notion of thinking that it's some $50 billion transfer.
Mr. Secretary Moniz, can you explain to the committee the insight that we, the United States government, will have as a result of this agreement on their uranium centrifuge program, number one, and number two, on their plutonium program as a result of the agreement stating there has to be modifications and or dismantlement of the plutonium reactor?
Yes, Senator. On the uranium centrifuges, we will have, well, the IAEA will have daily access and the use of advanced technologies to make sure that all of the idle ones are locked up and used only as replacements for broken ones, and they will confirm that they are broken. In addition, for 20 years, we will have containment and surveillance of all manufacturing of key centrifuge parts. So it's as General Clapper said, we have tremendously enhanced insight into their program. On the plutonium, they will be required to take out the core part of the reactor, fill it with concrete, and then with international collaboration, and we will be part of that. We will make sure that the replacement reactor is the one that reduces plutonium production by about a factor of 10. So it's way below the amount needed for a weapon. But secondly, they've also agreed that belt and suspenders, that the spent fuel for life, which is where the plutonium resides, will be sent out of the country. So we have very, very good containment there.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank all of you. I've been a member of and chair now the Strategic Subcommittee. I worked with Senator Donnelly and Senator Nelson over the years. It's been the unified view of the world's developed nations that Iran not have a nuclear weapon. It is a grave threat to peace in the world. Secretary Kissinger, sitting where you are, said a few months ago that if Iran gets a nuclear weapon, he named Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Egypt would get nuclear weapons. Proliferation dangers are very real, and that's why the whole world and even the UN has been firm on this. So I'm very worried about where we are, and I believe the initial era was the commencement of negotiations in 2009 after President Bush had pulled back from that because of the behavior of Iran. And experts in the region warned us that the Iranians are exceedingly patient, that talking can be a trap, and the deeper you get into this talk, the less able you are to take corrective action and to alter the situation as we see it. So now we're at the end. The Iranians see long term, and I'm afraid that we have endangered the goal that we had a pretty well unanimous nation world behind. Secretary Carter, do you believe that Iran represents the world's foremost sponsor of terrorism?
Let's see. State sponsor, probably so. Unfortunately, it's such a kaleidoscope these days that there are lots of sources of terror. But I think for state sponsorship, that's probably accurate.
think that's consensus. Secretary Kerry testified yes to that question yesterday in the House.
Right.
And I wish it weren't so.
Me too.
And there's a goal and dream that somehow Iran could be brought in from the cold and we can work with them. But I believe that it was former advisor to President Reagan, Bud McFarlane, who said revolutionaries don't go back on the revolution. And you believe that the Supreme Leader Khomeini remains committed to the revolutionary goals of the Iranian Revolution?
I only read what he says, which suggests that he does.
I think he does. I don't think he has any intention to abandon that. Hasn't he? He was recently at an event and led a rally in which chants punctuated the rally, "Death to America, death to Israel." Do you believe that those reflect his views?
Again, I'm not an expert, but it certainly, I could read the newspaper, certainly seems so, and that's the reason to be so concerned about Iran's malign activities, support for terrorism, and especially to make sure they don't get a nuclear weapon, which is key.
I think that's the only conclusion we can reach. I think he means what he says. We can think it's strange and unserious and not serious, but it is serious. It represents the radical ideological agenda of this regime, which makes it a pariah regime. It makes it a danger to the entire world. And negotiating an agreement that allows them to obtain missiles is also dangerous, even if it's 5 years or 8 years out. Iranians are very patient. You were asked earlier about this, and you said the reason we want to stop Iran from having an ICBM program is that the I in ICBM stands for intercontinental, which means having the capability to fly from Iran to the United States, and we don't want that, close quote. I think that was a very clear policy decision of the United States. But doesn't this agreement allow, after at least 8 years, they've been known to cheat, to purchase on the open market items that would help assist them in building an ICBM system capable of reaching the United States?
Well, I am, and I think we all need to be very concerned about their ballistic missile activities with or without this agreement. That's why ballistic missile defense is so important, including ballistic missile defense of the United States. I spoke earlier about ballistic missile defense of Israel, which we also work very
well. I think the administration and you have supported
missile
defense for the United States,
and
but you say they shouldn't have this capability and we should stop it, and this agreement, does it not, allows them to purchase anything they need on the world market after the date in the agreement?
No, Senator. Could I answer that? It actually does not. The 8 years represent the best that we were obviously able to negotiate with 3 countries of the 7 who said there should be nothing. But we were comfortable accepting the idea of the 8, which, by the way, still leaves us those 8 years with Chapter 7 enforcement with respect to that. But we were comfortable because we have a number of other tools already available to us, Senator, which we can apply to be able to prosecute their efforts with respect to missiles. Specifically, we have the Missile Technology Control Regime. We have Executive Order of the President of the United States, which allows him to sanction anybody who is providing any materials whatsoever for missile construction. We have the Proliferation Security Initiative with 100 countries, which allows us to block the transfer of materials for weapons construction. We have the Iran, North Korea, Syria Non-Proliferation Act. We have additional 2 executive orders. So we have huge tools available to us way into the future.
Seems to me that last agreement, this agreement would trump that.
No, there's no trumping of anything. These are all existing. We also have
I don't know what the language is in the agreement for if it's not has no meaning, Senator Kerry.
Senator, these are additional agreements that we have outside of this agreement which allow us to continue to protect us with respect to missile development. We also have additional UN sanctions that prohibit the flow of weapons to Hezbollah, prohibit the flow of weapons to Iraqi Shia, prohibit the flow of weapons to Houthi, prohibit the flow of weapons.
Well, they're flowing now, are they not?
Indeed, because they haven't been enforced, which is precisely what the administration has decided we need to do more effectively, and that's why in 3 days I'm meeting with the whole GCC in Doha to lay out the very specifics of the proposal for how we are going to push back against Iran. So I'd leave you with one thought, Senator. You've adequately and appropriately pointed to the rhetoric of the leader and to the things they're doing. Simple question. If that's what they want to do, are you better off preventing them from having a nuclear weapon? Or do you want to go right back to where we were when they had 19,000 centrifuges, 12,000 kilograms of material, enough for 10 to 12 bombs? They've already mastered the fuel cycle. So don't be looking 15 years down the road. Right now they have this ability. And we're stopping that. We're taking that away from them and providing a lifetime.
The senator's
no
time
subsidy
has expired.
inspection.
How'd that North Korean one deal work out for you, Senator McCaskill?
Well, Senator, I can give you the complete differentiation.
Senator McCaskill your time has expired. Senator McCaskill.
It didn't work out for me. I didn't cut the deal.
General Dempsey, is there anything in this agreement that would constrain our ability to take any military action that our country thought was necessary against Iran?
No, Senator.
Secretary Lew, I'm concerned about the alternative to the deal. And one of the things I don't think has been covered enough in all of the testimony that has occurred, and I think all of us are following all of this very closely, I got the point that Senator Nelson was trying to make, that the money is not in our control, and it appears, looking at it, if all the other countries walk away from us, if we reject this deal, that they're going to get the money one way or another. Either they're going to get the money because they're entitled to it if we do the deal, or they're going to get the money because we can't control it. But I don't know that that's completely accurate, and I think it's important because this is not about, is this a good deal? This is also about what happens if we don't do this deal. And I think it's important to talk about whether the power the United States would have if this deal was rejected to, in fact, force our will on these countries that hold this money. We have a lot of tools at our disposal as the major economic power that we are. A lot of these are our NATO allies, obviously Japan. So I think it's fair that we shouldn't just say if we walk away from this deal, they're going to get all the money and they're going to, I think it's fair to try to really drill down and you try to give us a picture. Let's assume, I know none of you want to assume that this deal is rejected, but let's assume it is. At that moment, what power do we have as a country to keep this money from flowing to Iran and its nefarious activities?
Senator, it's a very fair question, and obviously nobody can give you an entirely precise answer because there's perfectly legal ways for them to use some of this money now. For example, if they buy Chinese goods, they can pay with their reserves that are held in China. So they could make the decision that they're going to acquire the things they need to acquire through the countries where they have reserves and chip away at those reserves. The question of what our unilateral sanctions can do versus multilateral sanctions is a complicated one. We have powerful unilateral tools. The United States is the world's banking center. The dollar is a reserve currency. Transactions that go through U.S. financial institutions are within our grasp. But that doesn't give us the ability to reach out to all foreign banks and to all foreign transactions. And I think that it's at our own peril if we have a sanctions regime where we are enforcing unilateral sanctions that the rest of the world is rejecting, which is very different from what's been going on over these last few years. We have worked bilaterally with countries around the world to do things against their own economic interest because they agreed with us on the imperative of stopping Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. If they see us walk away from an agreement that they believe would stop Iran from getting a nuclear weapon, I think the degree of cooperation we get goes down considerably. It's not black and white. It's not we go from being able to do everything to doing nothing. But what's made the sanctions regime so effective these last few years is the fact that we've had the international cooperation. India and China have been buying less oil from Iran than would have been good for their economy. How do you enforce bilaterally with countries around the world doing things against their interest just by saying we insist? So there are things we can do. There are certainly ways, but it gets much harder.
And I appreciate that answer, but I really think it would be helpful for those of us who are really trying to analyze both scenarios, if you all would try to your best ability, put in writing what you envision, what would be our best effort at keeping Iran isolated if, in fact, this deal is rejected. Because I don't think it is fair for us just to assume that we have no power if this deal is rejected, because clearly we're still going to have a lot of power. I'm almost out of time, and this is an important question, I think, for Secretary Moniz. And I know this is a hard question to give an exact answer to, but do you believe that if we walk away from this deal, Iran has a nuclear weapon by Christmas?
Well, I can't really answer that question. What I can say is...
Do your best. I think it's important for us to know how close they are.
They are a nuclear threshold state today. They could certainly generate the nuclear materials within months. which is before Christmas. And what is then the unknown is the degree to which they have completed, which we can't discuss right now, other weaponization requirements. That's what, of course, the IAEA, in building up its dossier over many years, which now needs to complete, have certainly identified, labeled Iran as having had a structured program of activities relevant to nuclear weapons in the past. So it's a threshold state, and that's the risk we face. The deal will walk them back from that threshold and give us permanently more insight into their into any weapons program they might choose to pursue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Wicker.
They are a nuclear threshold state, and they have denied all along that they had any intention of doing so up to the present time. I think that is instructive. I think Senator McCaskill may be onto something here with regard to all of the options before us. My friend Senator Reid asked a question about, are we better off with a negotiated settlement or a military strike, as if those are the only two alternatives. Of course, we know that those are not the only two alternatives. I wish our European friends, our Western allies, had not been so eager to leave the sanctions regime, but they were. The United States could go it alone, and as the Secretary pointed out, we do have unilateral tools that would be effective. So, continued trying to get a good deal, continued unilateral tools on the part of the United States, making people choose between banking with America and banking with Iran, those tools are there. Let me say to you, General Dempsey, I appreciate your service, and I appreciate the many times you've come before this committee. We've disagreed and agreed from time to time. It would seem to me that your brief 9-sentence opening statement to this committee today amounts to damning this agreement with faint praise, I have to say. You mentioned that there are 6 areas in which Iran is a bad actor, and you say five of these malign activities give us real concern, and you list them, but then you end and give us these words of assurance. Ultimately, time and Iranian behavior will determine if the nuclear agreement is effective and sustainable. That, sir, does not give me a confidence level, and I just have to tell you that based upon your very brief and I think tepid endorsement of this agreement. With regard to the conventional arms embargo, as late as the spring, we weren't hearing about this. General Dempsey, when did you become aware that there would be this huge relief from the conventional arms embargo, and isn't it a fact that it caught you by surprise?
Well, first, Senator, I would ask you not to characterize my statement as tepid nor enthusiastic, but rather pragmatic. And I've said from the start that relieving the risk of a nuclear conflict with Iran diplomatically is superior to trying to do that militarily. But I will sustain the military options in case that becomes necessary. As to your question about timing, I was consulted or asked for my advice episodically when military implications became part of the conversation, and probably about a week or two before the agreement was finalized, I gave my final recommendation regarding sanctions.
Well, that's very late in the agreement, and I would just say it seems to me the advice that we've been getting on the other side of this agreement down through the months and over time, this massive retreat from conventional arms embargoes is something new and something very troubling. Let me just say, Mr. Chairman, in the minute I have left, that the assessment of the facts and the assessment of the effect this agreement will have by neighbors in the region, I think is so instructive, should be so instructive to this Congress. And I don't blame my friends on the Democratic side of the aisle for having concerns also. It is striking that from right to left, every ideology within the country of Israel is opposed to this agreement. It's striking that the Arab neighbors, the Saudis and others, are alarmed at this deal. And I would submit to the record, Mr. Chairman, in the closing seconds, an op-ed by Ari Shavit, senior correspondent for left of center Israeli newspaper Haaretz, in which he says the Iranian negotiated team succeeded in destroying completely the sanctions mechanism. He points out that the United States, European Union, Britain, France, Russia, and China recognize again and again Iran's right to develop advanced centrifuges, which could be 5 to 10 times bigger than the capacity of the old ones. This means, Mr. Shavit concludes, that the international community is not only enabling, but actually ensuring the establishment of a new Iranian nuclear program, which will be immeasurably more powerful and dangerous than its predecessor. I submit this article for the record, Mr. Chairman,
Without objection.
A great deal of concern. Thank you, sir.
Senator Shaheen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all very much, both for your efforts on this negotiation and for being here today. Secretary Carter, you were in the Middle East last week. Can you tell us what you heard from our allies in the Middle East about how they felt about this agreement, specifically Saudi Arabia and Israel? Obviously, we've heard what Prime Minister Netanyahu has had to say.
Sure, Senator. Beginning with Israel, Prime Minister Netanyahu was very clear, as he's been clear publicly, in his opposition to the deal. We discussed that, but then we discussed many other things as well. Hezbollah's activity up on the border with Lebanon. In fact, I visited there, our missile defense activities, our cyber security cooperation, our intelligence cooperation, lots of other regional issues, and so we discussed many topics. But he was very clear.
And excuse me for interrupting, but would you agree with Senator Wicker's characterization that the Israelis were united in their opposition to the agreement from left to right?
I only spoke about this to the Prime Minister, of course, who's the leader of the country. He was, as he's been publicly, very, very clear.
And what did you hear from some of our Arab allies in the Middle East?
I spoke to the King of Saudi Arabia, who repeated to me a statement he had issued a few days before supporting the agreement. He referenced that, again, I don't think this violated any confidence, that the verification and, as he put it, snapback provisions were particularly important to him, so he referenced those things. And then, again, we went on to talk about other things that are more related to the defense agenda, including his Air Force's munitions, cyber concerns that Saudi Arabia has, and something that we started to discuss at the GCC, namely Saudi Arabia's role in countering ISIL, which is a whole other subject.
And did you hear from any of our other Arab allies in the Middle East that they support the agreement?
I spoke to the Jordanians about it. Again, this wasn't a major topic with them. We had a lot of other things to talk about, but did not support. I did not express any opposition. I don't recall exactly what they said. It wasn't really the subject of our meeting there. Those were the three places that I met.
Thank you. General Dempsey, is there a military option short of invasion that would roll back Iran's nuclear program more substantially over the next 10 years than the JCPOA does, in your opinion?
Well, I'd have to make assumptions about how often we would be compelled to conduct airstrikes or stand-off munitions. But the the military options they exist would disrupt the program by several years, but there's nothing to say we couldn't repeat it if necessary.
And is there any intelligence information to suggest what Iran's response would be should we engage in an airstrike against them?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it rises to the level of intelligence, but the analysis suggests that they would counter our presence in the region at every opportunity and use these other malign activities that they have available to them.
Thank you. Secretary Moniz, there has been a lot of discussion about the 24-day delay, and you testified in the Foreign Relations Committee that to the extent to which we would be able to detect nuclear activity, so uranium, in an extended period beyond the 24-day delay. What if the activity does not include nuclear material? To what extent do you believe we could detect other activity other than uranium-related or nuclear-related activity?
Well, Senator, first of all, permit me to reinforce the fact that having the 24-day period is itself new in the sense that there's never been any time limit in terms of access to undeclared sites. Again, to repeat, on nuclear materials, we have very, very sensitive capabilities, and historically those have been proved, and we can add more in classified context. With regard to non-nuclear materials, it gets more difficult. However, when one has nuclear weapons specialized activities such as explosively driven neutron initiators, we would not be without tools to detect activities in that kind of a time period. But clearly, as one gets farther and farther away into, let's say, just conventional explosive testing, which is something militaries do normally, then it's a question of intelligence putting together the context for suspicious activities. But nuclear material, in the end, you need to do nuclear materials to get to the weapon, and that's where we have extraordinary techniques. Mr. Chairman, if I may add one more comment, if you permit, just to go back to Senator Wicker's comment on advanced centrifuges. I don't know that particular article you quoted, but it appears to have forgotten to mention that their most advanced machines, which are 5X their current machines, they are already operating at full cascade level, 2 different machines, and those are going to be dismantled before this is implemented. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I'm informed that Senator Ernest is required to preside over the vital proceedings on the floor of the United States Senate, which is critical to her presence. So I would ask the indulgence of my colleagues to allow her to proceed.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, colleagues. Gentlemen, thank you for being here today. This will be one of the most significant votes that we take as members of Congress moving forward. So I believe it is imperative that we get this right. Not long ago, the United States discovered that we had a data breach at OPM. Simple. Data, personnel records had been tapped into. So that just is laying the groundwork of where I'm going next. Secretary Carter and Secretary Moniz, I am very concerned regarding the government's ability to detect, deter, and defeat cyber attacks on our government, particularly by China, Russia, and Iran. With respect to Iran in particular, according to Director of National Intelligence James Clapper, Iran has conducted cyber attacks on U.S. government officials involved in nuclear nonproliferation, hacking which compromised the Marine Corps intranet, Sands Las Vegas Casino, and attacks against U.S. banks. In relation to the Iran deal, these attacks, along with recent successful attacks against OPM, leads me to have less than full confidence in our own cyber capabilities, let alone the cyber capabilities of the IAEA. It is vital IAEA has a Loctite ability to protect its equipment and technology, vital to ensuring effective monitoring of Iranian facilities under this agreement against cyber attacks. Just simple yes or no, Secretary Carter. Are you concerned regarding Iran's ability to impact the effectiveness of IAEA monitoring equipment through cyber?
I'm sorry, I can't give you a yes or no answer to that. I'm very concerned about Iranian cyber activity, and you named 3 countries. I could go on with the ones. This is a big problem, and sadly, I share the lack of confidence you have in the adequacy of our defenses. In the Defense Department, you'd think, with all that we have paid attention to protecting our own networks, that we would be secure, but we're not. And we know that, and it's not just Iran, but it's others as well. And that's why we're trying to make investments in that area and pull up our socks in the cyber area. But I can't reassure you on the cyber front.
I am very concerned about this. Secretary Moniz, yes or no? Do you share a concern that this could be vulnerable?
Oh, absolutely share a concern, but the IAEA does have some robust technologies in terms of...
They're much more advanced than the United States.
I didn't say that, no. Look, cyber is tough. General Dempsey also mentioned cyber is something that keeps us up all the time, and we have to develop our capabilities.
Fantastic. I have no confidence that we would not be able to know if there were tampering involvement going on as we try and monitor these activities, or as the AEAE tries to monitor these activities.
The IAEA, Senator, is of course quite aware of this, and they do have measures.
And I hope that they improve those measures. I do believe that we are vulnerable, as we've seen with our own infrastructure. And General Dempsey, we've heard some other discussion today about the choices that the President has with this agreement. Now, 2 weeks ago, many of our news outlets, USA Today, others, had quoted President Obama as, the choice is the Iran nuclear deal or war. This seems to be a military decision, and I understand that you advise the President on these issues. Is that what you have told the President, is that we either take this deal or we go to war?
No, at no time did that come up in our conversation, nor did I make that comment.
Who is advising the President, then, that we must go to war if this deal is not signed?
I can't answer that. I can tell you that we have a range of options, and I always present them.
And I thank you for that, because I do think, and I think it's imperative that everybody on this panel understand that there are other options available out there, and a multitude of options. We're taught in the military about DIME, diplomatic options, information operations, military operations, and economic types of sanctions and opportunities that we might have. So for the President to outright reject everything but war is outrageous to me. And I do hope that you are able to better advise him that he needs to be careful with his language, because that seems to be the rhetoric we are hearing out there, is that we either go to war or we accept this deal, and I reject that premise.
As long as we agree that that military strikes on a sovereign nation is an act of war, but there are things between here and there.
Absolutely. I agree, General Dempsey. Thank you, gentlemen, very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. General Dempsey, you answered, well, first of all, let me thank everybody at this table for your service to our nation and the hard work and dedicated service that produced this agreement, whether we vote for it or not, and I have made no decision for myself. I think the nation owes you its gratitude for the hard work that you've done. Is it fair to say, General Dempsey, that the breakout time for Iran to produce enough fissile material for a nuclear weapon will return to what it is now, about 2 to 3 months, after the 10-year period?
I don't know that it's fair to say that, because I think that some of the additional protocols and things which are out of my area of expertise could inhibit them for a longer period of time.
Let's assume for the moment that, in fact, the breakout time is reduced at the end of that 10-year period to essentially what it is now. will the United States be in a stronger or weaker position militarily if the military option is necessary for some future president?
The chairman earlier correctly pointed out that Iran could procure some weapon systems that could make our military option more difficult, but will not make it more impossible. And I think the answer to your question, Senator, is depends how we use the time between now and then. And we've got a plan with our allies in the region to increase their capabilities over that period of time. So if we use the time wisely and we have the resources necessary to do it, we should not assume we would be in a weakened position.
Because the expectation has to be that the Iranians will use that time to build their conventional forces. At the very least, they'll have more revenue from various sources as the sanctions are lifted, substantial revenue. Is that correct?
Yes, but they are starting from an extraordinarily weakened position conventionally, but in the asymmetric arena, they are starting from a position of relative capability.
Where I'm going with this question is, what changes in military force structure do you think the United States has to take, both to make sure that our national security is assured and also that our allies is as well? What specific changes should the Armed Services Committee be supporting in the near and longer term?
Well, I mean, that's almost a separate hearing, but I would suggest to you that we really need to have the kind of budget certainty that the Secretary of Defense has articulated, and then secondly, that we should not at this point in time consider reducing our force presence in the Middle East area of responsibility.
Secretary Lew, let me turn to the economic sanctions that could be available, which my colleague from Iowa has mentioned. Can those be put back in place? Can the United States alone, even without our allies, use its finance system and its banks to implement a severe sanction system?
Senator, we certainly have very significant tools that we have used unilaterally and we could use again unilaterally. But what we've seen over the last several years is the impact of multilateral sanctions that have truly had a crushing impact on Iran's economy. It's brought them to the table. They've reached the agreement that we're here discussing. I think the notion that we can unilaterally equal or surpass that is something that is inconsistent with what we've learned.
We may not be able to equal or surpass it, but we can certainly make a significant and also severely damaging effort if we choose to do so.
We can. And what I would say is, importantly, that the snapback provisions that are in this agreement, if Iran violates it, make it so that both the U.S. and the international sanctions would be back in place, which puts us in the strongest position.
The challenge will be to mobilize
our
partners in that effort.
I don't think it's a challenge. The way it was constructed is a very strong snapback provision. The international sanctions snap back in a way that we can work our will by exercising a veto if there's a disagreement with us.
Secretary Kerry, did you have a comment? I noticed that you seemed to be...
There's a surreality here. I mean, and with all respect, the senator from Iowa is not here, but the President of the United States is not mandating war. He doesn't want to go. It's not his choice. And he's not advocating war. What he is saying is that if you analyze the alternatives here, and this is what I mean by surreality, when you say, could the United States continue some sanctions, to what end? To negotiate? I mean, with whom? You think the Ayatollah is going to come back and negotiate after he's already
Secretary Kerry, the time has expired. Please shorten your remarks.
One thing, Senator?
Yes.
The reason that the President talks about the possibility of war is Iran has already made it clear that if this is rejected, they consider themselves free to go back and enrich and to go back to where they were with the 12,000 kilograms, 10 to 12 bombs, et cetera. And the inevitable consequence of that will be, what are you going to do about it? Next step. We will have lost the international support because the international community is ready to enforce this deal. If we're not unilaterally, they walk away. So you have huge difficulty with the sanctions, and you lose your capacity to have the support for the military strike, if there had to be one. It's not a choice the president wants to make, but it's the inevitable consequence of them moving to assert what they believe is their right in the furtherance of their program.